What's up, YouTube? Welcome back. Let's get into a controversial one today. Let's talk about where to place your red dot on your rifle. Now, this becomes an argument sometimes it's just a conversation, but usually in the forums and things online in the comment sections, it becomes an argument. And sometimes some people who create content or write articles, things like that, they really like to be very strongly opinionated on where this has to be. Some people say this has to be as far forward as possible on the receiver. You don't want to put it up on the rail. We pretty much have understood that you don't want to put it on anything that's going to lose zero, move around up here, but as far forward on the receiver as possible, as you see here. And then there's people who don't mind putting it somewhere in the middle or even farther back. A lot of people get mad in the comment section at me specifically because this rifle here that I use and a lot of my other ones, I have the optic, the red dot, this Romeo 5, I have it tucked back here close to my backup sight. So with it being tucked up to my backup sight, it's close to my eye. People say that that's totally wrong. Now, some people get very serious about telling me that's totally wrong. And a lot of people like to spread the information that you just can't do that it really screws with the way that you can see your peripheral. You lose all your open range of sight here because you have the optic really close to your eye. Those are also the same people that are going to argue and tell you that you always have to shoot with two eyes open. So we'll get into a little bit about how that kind of contradicts itself. But the bottom line is that every shooter is a little bit different, and every shooter might have learned a little bit different. So every shooter might have a little bit different eyes and they might see something different. So we have to keep an open mind throughout this whole video. So let's start out with what most people out there, especially on the internet, will tell you this is what you have to do with your rifle, with your red dot setup. And that is move it as far forward on the receiver as possible. Not on the handguard, but on the very most forward piece of pick rail that you can get it into. So that's taking it as far away from your eye as possible. And the idea behind that is when you're aiming up on target, now you have all this room around here or between here, and you can see with your peripheral everywhere. You're not having this big optic stuck in your face. The argument is that when it's up in your face like this, is that this becomes bigger in your vision and it occludes your sight. It gets in the way of seeing what's going on around you. But as I said, these are the same people that will always argue you have to use two eyes when shooting red dots. So from personal experience, and what many people will tell you, is that when you have both eyes open, this kind of starts to get blendy. It's kind of like having an A2 front sight. You kind of see it, but you kind of don't see it, because with two eyes open, all of a sudden the whole world opens up to you again. So I personally, if you haven't figured this out by now, I have my optics very close to my eye. I don't think that I have a problem seeing anything around me. I have a very clear picture of everything in front of me because I have my left eye open. Now here's where it gets tricky. So let's say I needed to take a pretty precision shot and all I was equipped with was your basic red dot. Now, yes, I'm gonna rest this gun. I'm not even gonna fire it right now, but yes, I'm resting on the magazine, and that's a whole argument for another video. But if I needed to take a precision shot, I want this gun and this optic and my eyeball and that dot, I want those to be dialed in pretty close, and I want them to be as shake-free as possible. So an example would be using some sort of a platform for steadiness. If I were to get down and I were to need to start thinking about taking a very serious shot, in my opinion, when this optic is closer to your face, it doesn't wobble as much. If the gun moves a little bit, we all have a little bit of movement with the gun. So when it's closer to your face, and I'm going to turn the dot up just a little bit because it's bright out. When it's closer to your face, I feel that you have more control over the gun and what's happening in the optic. Here's an AK. It puts it just a little bit farther away from you, and it just seems like there's a hair more wobble zone. Now I know I'm not sitting on a magazine, so let me go ahead and do that. YouTube compliant magazine. So as I sit on this optic, it's a little bit farther away, and it's steady for now, but I'm starting to see the difference. Now, if I get behind this 308 with the optic all the way up forward here, can I still do the job? Absolutely. But if I was gonna free float, if I didn't have support, that starts to get just a little bit more wobbly out far forward, in my opinion. So sitting down is one thing, but when you're standing up, and especially under stress, especially if you've been running or something, which, let's be honest, a red dot sight is not exactly a precision tool. This is more for up close battles or encounters. But now if you have to take that long shot and you're out of breath and you're getting wobbly, all this is going on. Sure, this is very exaggerated, but I think the farther out the optic, I think the more perceived motion you have. Now, I don't know if it's real motion or not, but it's perceived motion. I personally am much more comfortable when I can tuck this optic right up into my eye and pretend it's any other hunting scope that I'm really dialed into looking through. So I don't want to see this tube waving around out here that I have to look through. The tube gets smaller as it goes away from you. This has to be something people need to admit. If they're going to admit that the tube gets bigger as it comes closer to your eye, they have to admit that the tube gets smaller as it goes away from your eye. So instead of having a pretty big open view through this tube, you start to end up looking like you're looking through a straw by the time you're getting farther out. Scout rifles have optics mounted very far forward. There's a reason that scout rifles aren't that popular in general and in the military anymore. Now, the scout rifle argument, again, is another argument for another video, but the basic idea behind it is the scout rifles weren't actually that accurate with the optic mounted up front like that. They were good for getting a good field of view, but when it came down to taking really good, precise shots, they weren't that great. That's the problem with, even if you get a stable platform to mount the AK optic up front on a rail, you can get pretty stable platforms, but still, the idea is that your accuracy is a little bit lost the farther forward you go with it. So this one I have set far forward because that's the way I prefer to run it with this AK in general. I could bring it back, I just don't want to. I could have set it up here on this rail, but I feel it's more secure on a side rail. So this is a preference thing. With the AK, I prefer it up front. With an AR style platform, I prefer it in the back. So like I said, for me, I like it up close to my eye. I'm not worried about recoil. Very comfortable for me. I can see everything that's going around if I needed to maneuver. As soon as it's on the AK, it's a totally different animal to me. I can still use it, but a totally different animal. I just don't feel as connected with the optic. I don't feel like I'm in there. I feel like every time I pull the trigger, I actually see more of the optic going around with recoil. That was the same round in both of those guns, 7.62 by 39. So when the optic is closer to my face, I don't see as much of this wobbling out in front of me. That's a distraction for me. Now with it all the way far forward on something that's going to heavily recoil, like an AR-10, possible, of course. Still get the hits just fine. Is it as comfortable for me, or do I feel as connected with the optic? No, I don't. So like I said, it's up to the individual user. The basic point of this video is don't let anybody tell you how to mount your optic. You can seek advice from people, and if they give you something you want to hear, then go ahead and take their advice. But don't let anybody tell you that you have to do anything. Like I said, we all have different eyes. We all have different preferences. People who grew up hunting and with their face in hunting scopes, the good old crosshair, big, long scopes, they're used to being all up in there, all up in that scope. Some of the people who have trained with the scope up forward or the optic up forward, they're just very used to that. So each person's going to tell you why they love their method. Me personally, I love the method because I can shoot either way. When I want to take the precision shot, I know how to. I close my left eye, I can steady myself. I like to be all up in the rifle scope or optic. When I do go for a more of a CQB type of situation, I open up both eyes, no problem, and I can see everything. My whole world is opened up, and I can use the red dot just fine. I don't know why people say it's going to hamper you. You're not going to miss something. Trust me. If somebody runs out in front of you, you're not going to miss something. I mean, it's a body going in front of your face. This isn't going to cover up an entire body. Your left eye, trust me, covers that. So do what's right for you. Don't let other people tell you what you have to do. Even if you're one of those people that prefer the scout setup, hey, if that's what you're good at, then hey, use what you're good at. But the really good news about this is these are movable. You can do whatever you want. You can test this for yourself. Move it forward, move it back, put it in the middle, and see what you like. You don't have to Loctite it in with red Loctite and take a torch before you get it back off. So I hope you like this video, and I hope you like these kind of videos. Until we see you next time at the next video, stay safe, have fun, and keep shooting. Any optic you want, wherever you want.